The vaunted Golf R, the pinnacle of performance for VW's humble hatchback. Now, I have test driven every iteration of this car since it arrived here in 2008 and have fond memories of each drive. And now, for the first time in 7 years, Volkswagen has redesigned their Rascally Rabbit for an even higher degree of handling with fun new drive modes. Akin to the midsize family sedan, the hot hatch segment was once a big deal. These were cars that bolstered a brand's reputation and street cred, but nowadays, not so much. But for the enthusiast crowd, the allure of a speedy little 5-door hasn't wavered, which is why Volkswagen is leaving the base Golf off of their American car menu, and instead is exclusively importing the GTI and Golf R, the models that the drivers want. And this all-new Mark 8 keeps to the Golf R's tenets of being fast, glued to the road, fun to drive, and within financial reach of mere mortals. And don't worry, manual lovers, a 6-speed is still available. But this DSG automatic-equipped Golf R, with all of its features as standard, carries an MSRP of $45,885. It only comes in 3 colors, and if you're shift for yourself curious, the stick costs $800 less, delivers 15 fewer pound-feet of torque, and loses 3 mpg. If you were expecting radical changes here, you'll be disappointed. When compared with the 2019 Golf R, the last model year sold here, the spec sheets are nearly identical. But that doesn't mean the updates that have been made aren't significant. First off, there's more power from this enhanced 4th-gen 2-liter turbocharged engine. With 21 psi of max boost, it produces 315 horses as compared with the previous 288, along with 295 pound-feet of torque, up from 280. Weighing only about 100 pounds more, acceleration is brisk, with a launch control feature helping to take it from 0 to 60 in only 4.7 seconds on premium gas. And the other mechanical headline is the dynamic torque splitter on the rear axle, sending more power to the wheel on the outside of the corner, creating a go-kart-like turn-in that can be felt even at mundane speeds. And taking advantage of this new torque vectoring all-wheel drive system, the Golf R introduces a drift mode among the numerous other available driving modes, even one that caters the car to the Nürburgring's North Loop. Because winter weather is still in play here in upstate New York, though not this week as it turns out, the Golf R arrived with a set of performance winter tires instead of the standard summer rubber, so the overall experience hasn't quite been the same. But drift mode is fun, making wheel spin and oversteer easier to achieve in a controlled private setting. And if you slide too far out, ESC automatically reels you back in. You can choose the drive mode here or over here on the steering wheel. The only odd thing is that the car defaults to sport mode on startup and not comfort, which includes excess engine sound you don't necessarily want first thing in the morning. The adaptive chassis control, drivetrain, steering, all tied to the drive modes, or you can customize your own settings. And between the differential lock, all-wheel drive, and torque vectoring, the Golf R has every trick up its sleeve to keep the car pointed where you want it to go. As for the ride quality, the suspension settings automatically adapt to the road, or can be locked into soft or firmer tuning if you so choose. But either way, the Golf R provides sophisticated forgiveness to rough roads with a high degree of comfort. The only exception to this is if you have a single episode impact, such as a pothole, well, then it feels and sounds like the chassis is breaking. I have put a lot of miles on this car this week, and it's definitely an exciting drive. But perhaps not quite as exciting as I imagine it would be if it had come with the manual transmission. Now, that's not to say this DSG isn't smart and quick, because it is. And of course, you can paddle shift for more control and engagement, but the Golf R is just one of those cars that cries out for a manual transmission. Nevertheless, the new torque vectoring rear axle, locking differential, and fun new drive modes make it a unique drive each and every time, with go-kart-like turn-in and a backfiring exhaust note that you control with your right foot. Now, as it turns out, these winter tires have not been needed this week, and they do ding the handling and ride comfort some while also increasing the cabin noise. But the Golf R is a hoot to drive, with enough comfort and fuel efficiency to be driven every day. The Nappa leather sport seats are simple in their controls, with full power on the driver's side and partial power for the passenger. They look great and hold you in place without being intrusive. And the head-up display lets you keep your focus on the road. As you can see, the interior is a clean design with very few buttons. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Volvo pulls it off quite nicely. But when your computer processor is this slow, it just doesn't work very well. And that's because just about everything you want to access quickly when you first get into the car, like the climate control functions and drive modes, they're stuck behind this laggy touch screen. And these touch control functions up here are not illuminated. So at night, it's either the steering wheel controls or voice commands because you can't see these. As a rule of thumb, if you can't beat the speed of a smartphone, which is the benchmark of our expectations these days, then don't do it. Take the climate-controlled seat buttons off of the screen. I like the idea of touch controls, but the execution isn't quite there. At night, the Golf R has some fun ambient lighting choices that provide visual pop, and there's some R-welcome lighting to greet you. It really looks great in here after dark. The driver display is highly customizable, with your choice of focus, including mapping, performance, and more. As a highway cruiser, at least on these snows, the cabin is a little loud, so you'll have to crank the Harman Kardon in order to hear your tunes, but you do have travel assist that keeps the car centered, at a safe distance and speed while on the highway, though I've experienced a recurring adaptive cruise issue that thinks my hands aren't on the wheel when in fact they are. I've averaged better than the 30 mpg highway estimate, by the way, so fuel economy is stellar, with 26 mpg estimated in mixed driving. Otherwise, the IQ Drive driver assistance features are comprehensive, but don't include a 360-degree camera. As for versatility, it's a manually operated hatch with 25% more cargo volume than before with the rear seats up, good for holding one bicycle. There's a removable cargo cover and fold flat seats. It's also low to the ground, so loading is easier than in an SUV. The rear seats are heated with their own climate controls and don't feel claustrophobic, though you do stare directly into the front headrest. So if it were mine, I'd likely choose the manual transmission so I could feel more involved. Because this Golf R is so good at what it does, I sometimes feel like I'm just along for the ride. Either way, we should all be glad that VW hasn't abandoned this car. A nice counterpoint to the EV revolution. For TestDriveNow.com, I'm Steve Hammis.